taste of bustin' makes me feel good.
Welcome to another episode of Hunting Hunts, a Ghostbusters podcast and vidcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, Donnie, the Emerald Ghoulish enthusiast. I don't know. The
Hey,
Slimer enthusiast.
what's up, Ghostbuster fans? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy, the podcasting machine, the big nerd in green. It's the Emerald Enthusiast, here to present to you the spookiest podcast that you'll ever love, Hunting Haunts.
Now, do you prefer Slimer or the Stay Puft Man? Because I can call you the Stay Puft enthusiast.
uh, I would go with Slimer just because he's green. You know, he's got that spectral green energy. So
I see. It's all about the green. So on that Christmas tree, you're gonna have Green Lantern, the Hulk, Slimer. Is that about right? Yeah.
It's all about the green, baby.
Yeah. Uh, if Donnie ever made a multiverse video game, that's what would be in it. Swamp Thing, Green Lantern, Slimer, the Green Hornet, um, any other green, the Ninja Turtles because they're green.
Yeah, there you go.
Anybody
Greedo.
else?
Greedo.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Savage, what is it? Savage Dragon from
Yeah, Savage
Image.
Dragon. Yeah, I used to have some of those comics.
He's green, right?
Yep.
So all the green people.
Yep.
Kite Man wears green, so you put a little bit of Kite Man on there.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
The lizard.
Vision. Yeah, Vision.
Scorpion.
Scorpion. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
It's roll off all the. It's name the green characters day, I guess, on the podcast. But no, um, we're here obviously to talk about Ghostbusters. Specifically, we're gonna review Volume 2
Mhm.
of the Ghostbusters ongoing comic, the graphic novel, which covered issues
5 through 8.
5 through 8. Yes, there we go. But before that, Donnie, why don't we take a look at um, obviously we can't review um, Ghostbusters Afterlife because
Right.
um, we haven't seen it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But we can talk a little bit of uh, how the film is doing.
By all
Um,
means, sir.
and it's doing quite well. Um, it's so I'm going to pull up the numbers here quickly,
All right.
and the website that I'm using um, is the numbers. That's the website that I'm using. Um, so for context, that's where we are.
Okay.
Um, but so Ghostbusters Afterlife has made to date $104.9 million domestically, $42.7 million at the international box office. Keep in mind, it hasn't opened in all the territories there, for a grand total of 147.6 worldwide million dollars so far. Um,
Those are good pandemic numbers so far.
they are, and given that um, given that the budget is um, 75 million, uh, so right now it has basically grossed already two times its with its worldwide uh, total. It's grossed two times its production budget so far, according to this website. Um, domestic, so far, it's running a little bit behind domestically uh, of the 2016 Ghostbusters. You know, the all ladies film, uh, but that's nothing to be concerned about because typically after the Thanksgiving holiday, the box office slows down a bit
Mhm.
before Christmas and New Year, and then it usually has a bit of a resurgence,
Right.
during those 2 weeks. So, things will pick up again. And I think when it all shakes out and it's all said and done, I think this one, this film, at least on the domestic front, will either equal or surpass the 2016 version. Um, Even if it doesn't, I don't know. I don't think that that's a concern for potentially more Ghostbusters, and here's why. And again, this is no slant towards the 2016 movie because you guys know if you've listened to our or watched our review, you'll know that we enjoyed it.
Yeah, we were both fans of that.
But the reason why this one will be labeled a success financially, where that one is labeled is a box office failure and lost the studio money, is because of the budget. By virtue of the 2016 film had a budget of $144 million.
Mhm.
That's just too
Just
high.
that's just production. That's not promotion at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, they say to at least break even, you have to make two times your
Hmm.
production budget
Right.
worldwide. So, you know, that is a tough ask. Um, when the budget of your film is $144 million. Um, like if you look at Ghostbusters 2016, um, and this is just a comparison. Um, so it made worldwide, let's see, $229 million.
So this one, the Afterlife, is already kind of encroaching on that.
Yeah, because if you think about it, it shows here, basically worldwide box office made 1.6 times the production budget of the 2016 Ghostbusters. So that does not follow the trajectory the studios want of, to
Right.
break even you have to make two times.
Right. You got to double it and then
Yeah,
some. Right.
yeah. And that wasn't even, and again, remember, Ghostbusters 2016 was released in the summertime
Hmm.
when there was no global pandemic,
Right.
whereas Ghostbusters Afterlife is released, you know, borderline winter and pandemic.
Right.
So when you take all those numbers into consideration, you could see why. Because somebody like, well, if I saw some, and again, Donnie and I are not here to poo poo all over the 2016 version
No.
because we actually liked it.
Hmm.
But what I'm trying to point out is that some very ardent fans of the 2016 version are saying, well, look, so far the 2016 version is ahead of Afterlife. And how come they're talking about that one positively and they say that the 2016 film is a financial failure? I just gave you all the reasons why. And largely is budget.
Right.
It's, for example, to take it back to DC, it's the same reason why when 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 movie pundits talk about Man of Steel, BVS, and Justice League being underperformers, well, even though they made money, they underperformed because the budgets were so huge.
Mhm.
And so the ask to break even and make a profit is a lot more the bigger your budget is, right? So
Right.
that's why Ghostbusters Afterlife is seen as a success, and why the 2016 film is not. Um, from financial perspectives, again, we haven't seen it, so I can't tell you if I think that the Afterlife film is better than the 2016 version. I will be able to say that when I see it, and when Donnie sees it,
Yes.
we'll tell you
We
what we
both
think.
want to see it, but neither one of us feels comfortable in the theater right now.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. So, but when we do see it, and it's coming on video on demand, Donnie, in early January, so we'll be able to get a chance to see it, and we'll
yeah.
kick off the new year with a review of Afterlife. So stay
Mhm.
tuned for that. But just want to give you an update on Afterlife. The box office is doing quite well. Things are looking positive for the future of the franchise, and so that's a good thing. I really hope they explore a Netflix TV series. I think this
Okay.
franchise is ripe for television
Mhm.
and the long form storytelling. So I'm hoping they go that route at some point. But for now, we'll wait and see where they go next. For now, let's look at comic books and review Volume 2. But Donnie, is there anything you wanted to mention about the numbers that I threw out?
No, again, you have to look at everything right now with a grain of salt. For instance, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, one of the most successful movies released in the pandemic, it just crossed $400 million not that long ago. Whereas, its predecessor made almost a billion. It was like 880 or 880 billion or something like that. Again, the times have changed. A lot of people don't feel like going out in the theaters. And so you've got to look at things a little bit differently, a different lens at this point. So I don't think that these numbers in any way mean that um, people aren't still interested in Ghostbusters on film. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
let's take a look at the comics because we love comics.
Indeed. I mean, who doesn't love comics?
Very, very sick people.
Disturbed individuals.
So we're on to Ghostbusters issue number 5. This was by IDW Publishing. And issue number 5 opens in a theme park in Schenectady. And we see a clown that initially I thought, oh, he kind of looks like Pennywise, which I didn't think it was Pennywise, but that's what came to mind. So he's kind of entertaining kids in the park, and we see a family, and they are all having a great time. And then suddenly the clown starts to barf up ghost bats. Just, definitely not another day at the park.
I mean, what are they feed? What are they feeding these poor clowns at the amusement park? That's what my first thought. What kind of street meat are they eating? It ain't good.
Well, my second thought, if you look at the way they're colored, they kind of look like Green Lantern constructs.
Why
But
did I think? Why did I know your mind was going to go there? That's what would happen if Batman had a Green Lantern ring and had a stomach ache.
I immediately thought of the Dawnbreaker from DC.
Yeah, there you go. See that? There should be a Ghostbusters Dawnbreaker crossover.
Oh, I love it. Hey, yeah, sign me up.
From the first, yeah, yeah.
First crossover to the last.
I can't do it for everything. Contrary to popular belief.
Oh, so this scene ends when a kid named Scott is possessed, and we'll see Scott later on. Cut to Manhattan, where the Ghostbusters are getting in shape because the city is forcing them under their contract. And they're not all that happy about it. We go outside, and a college girl runs up to Egon. She's a Green Lantern. She's a Ghostbusters fangirl. See, now I'm on Green Lantern. She, she's a Ghostbusters fangirl, and he signs her bra, which I At least I'm hoping that's her bra. But anyway, ladies, don't expose yourself in public. Nonetheless, he's good natured about it and he signs the autograph.
Why don't I have anybody asking me to sign these things? I'm kidding.
So, so the Ghostbusters are sent to the
I mean,
park.
depends. If like Trish Stratus is listening to this podcast, then I mean, and she somehow wants my autograph, sure. Well, you know, or Mandy Rose, or
Sure.
I'm not going to go on, but you anyway.
Yeah.
Continue.
That's for the Multiverse Wives List podcast. So anyway, the Ghostbusters are sent
Multiverse
to.
Wives Forever, from the first to the last. That should be a podcast on its own.
All right, focus.
Oh, it's over now. I'm out. Show's over, folks. See you later.
People are wanting to tune in for Ghostbusters, and you're talking about women, and I'm talking about Green Lantern. So anyway, the Ghostbusters are sent to the park by Walter Peck, and this is Fantastic Land, to take care of these giant bat energy constructs. And we see Egon actually use a proton grenade here, and I like the visuals there. They make their way in with the use of the proton grenade, but then they are trapped there, and we see them coming face to face with this entity that we learn more about later. So, what were your impressions of issue number 5?
I again, first of all, the visuals of the clown with, you know, barfing up green bats was um, jarring right after, like it, you know, it surprises you right out of the gate. Um, but the whole scenario about, you know, the Ghostbusters being partially benched
Mm-hmm.
and only being allowed to like go bust ghosts when they're told by the government
Right.
was interesting. It kind of reminded me of like the premise of Civil War
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that whole debate on the Marvel thing. And but also I liked I liked the aspect of, you know, when we find out why Egon is suddenly getting the attention of all these women.
Mm-hmm.
It's rather interesting. It's not what you think. It's when it's actually revealed. It's like very typical Egon,
Right.
and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. And we do see that later on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We also see it. One of the files I thought was interesting that one of the characters in the files was named Sam Hain, which that's
Mhm.
actually how you spell Samhain, which is the holiday that predates Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
the old
Oh yeah.
pagan Halloween. I thought that was an interesting
Oh,
touch too.
that's an interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So issue number 6 opens up. We see Kylie and Ray. Kylie is an employee at Ray's Occult Books, and she figures out that the Ghostbusters are dealing with a cycle haunting. We see more about that later. Back at the theme park, we see the toys manifest and attack the Ghostbusters. So the boy from the previous issue, and again, this is what was his name? Scott. So I like that at one point Kylie said, "Yeah, this is a Regan situation. That's a Exorcist reference," which I thought
Mm.
was cool.
Yeah.
So Scott is controlling the various features of the park. They are coming to life like a giant monkey statue and the horses from the carousel.
I really love how evocative the art was. Like how, like everything that was possessed by the ghost really popped off the page. Part of that is the pencils, but part of that is the colorist. So you want to give a shout out to both, because
Yes,
I mean the color really popped. It was vibrant. It was like the tone was like scary but vibrant at the same time. You know what I mean?
right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, like I said, I really liked how they used the green here. The green
Yeah,
popped against the dark
yeah,
backgrounds.
yeah.
So, a lot of great visuals here.
Hashtag it's all about the green. That's
So So
Come on, Donnie, we gotta get that. Gotta get that trending. We
get
gotta
going.
get the social media impressions. They
Right,
turn things into global phenomenons, Donnie.
right, yeah. So eventually, we see that the Ghostbusters get the ghost, and we'll learn more about the ghost's specifics and its motivation in the upcoming issues. The ghost releases the kid and possesses Peter, because you see that among the various Ghostbusters, you have like Winston, who's very noble, just wants to help people. You have Egon and Ray, who are science based, but Peter has some greedy tendencies. So, he's a little Larfleeze esque at times. And so
Hmm.
the ghost possesses Peter. And that's how this issue ends.
Yeah. I love the ending. The end imagery was great because they're talking to, they're conversing with Peter, like in the field, and all this craziness is going down. They think they've defeated the ghost at one point,
Hmm?
but then you see the look on Peter's face as he slightly turns around,
Mm-hmm.
and he's actually the one that's been possessed.
That's been
That
possessed.
was pretty. What a way to end the issue. Very shocking. But you know, and it's funny how they were pleading with the ghost, right? I think it was Egon that said, "Take me,"
Mm-hmm.
but he's like, "You're not. You're too good. You're too. You're no use to me." And it's funny how he went into the most, or he possessed the, what can we say, morally ambiguous Peter
Mm-hmm.
Venkman.
Right.
So it was a good way to end the issue. I enjoyed that. I thought that was.
So issue number 7 starts off. The other Ghostbusters realize that Peter is possessed. And then we see a very interesting story turn here. It switches to Peter's mind. And
Mhm.
we see Peter actually having a conversation with this ghost. This ghost is the Hungry Manitou,
Mm.
and also known as the Brain Bug. And we see on the inside he forms like construct monkeys, and we also see, well, on the outside we see that he forms things, clowns that look like the killer clowns from outer space. Very terrifying things going on. But we see the continuation of the scene playing out in the theme park in Fantastic Land, as well as this conversation inside Peter's mind.
I really liked the conversation inside Peter's mind, for two reasons. There was a scene where he's like, "Oh," like he's in a void, and then he comes upon a door, a doctor's office door, and it's ultimately it's his office, right? It's a facsimile of his office, and when he steps inside, he makes a comment of, what did he say about he's wishing for a specific type of woman? What did he say?
I don't remember exactly what it said, but I know what you're talking about.
I
Yeah.
prefer a Swedish
Yeah.
something, something like a Swedish masseuse or something along those lines. And
Right.
I'm like, fist bump, brother.
But
I,
let
you
me
know,
give you. Go ahead.
I really am like the Venkman of for the purpose of this podcast. I'll be Venkman. Venkman, you could be Ray.
So let me give you a little bit of background here on the Hungry Manitou. This was an entity summoned by an Algonquin medicine man's curse that was placed on European settlers in the pre-Revolutionary War era of North America in the 1600s. And the problem is that this ghost became greedier and greedier, and it no longer like discerned between anyone. It just liked the more emotional souls, and it,
Mm.
it really developed a taste for the greedy. And we see that here. And so we see that eventually the Manitou, it awakens in a cycle. Again, we talked about a cycle haunting, and it actually last awoke during what was the name of that? Woodstock.
Mm.
Although it said that the hippies didn't notice, as you might expect. But but that's what this ghost is
Their
after.
minds are preoccupied. So
Exactly. Um, Another thing I want to throw out here that I thought was really cool, very quickly, is that Peter said in college he was known as Mighty Joe Young. Now, you might think of Mighty Joe Young, the big gorilla character. He actually spells it Jung, and that's a reference to a Swedish psychiatrist named Carl Jung who developed analytical psychology. So if you've heard Jungian archetypes or, the introvert extrovert personality type, that's Carl Jung. And so I like the fact that he mentions this and you get kind of a validation of Peter's past schooling.
um, yeah, I just want to say, um, he, I liked the um, I liked um, the the mythology and the story for the ghost.
Mhm.
Like they're exploring other cultures, and I like that.
Right, right. But again, they did their homework here when it came to that, and I like the fact that before Peter, the way he fights back against this ghost is he was like, you're an addict. You know, I'm a psychologist and I know what an addict looks like, and you're addicted to eating these greedy emotional souls.
Right. And he's right because the ghost was like, "Oh no, I'm not an addict," and
Hmm.
he's like, "Really? You crave souls, don't you?"
Right.
And when Venkman proved that the ghost was an addict, like the ghost was getting all pissed off,
Hmm.
like, "No, I'm not." It's like, and
It's
what I like about this issue is, yes, it makes fun of Venkman's kind of penchant for being a little bit, a pervert. Um,
a little bit
uh,
overly fond of the women, shall we say?
right. But it also shows how smart he is,
Hmm.
and I like that. I
Well,
like that there's a balance.
he
It's not
attacks
just
this ghost from an intellectual perspective. He doesn't show emotion, and that eventually allows him to purge the ghost, and that's how the Ghostbusters capture the ghost.
yeah.
Yeah, I really thought that was just a really solid piece of writing there.
I love how you're right. They sort of had to um, annoy and aggravate the ghost. Like it was like a even though Venkman was possessed, it was still a team effort. Like he was doing the work on the inside,
Hmm.
while the guys took care of the physical aspect.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
yeah, likewise.
That was really well played.
Yeah, and like I said, I like the fact that they explored that part of Peter's character.
Mm,
That he
yeah,
could in faced with this horrifying, hungry ghost, that's possessed his body, he's able to remain calm and cool. And you see, them play up the fact that he's an intellectual and a very strong intellectual. So yeah, I like that part of this story.
agreed.
Yeah,
100%. Like I thought it was very important that they show how smart Peter is.
yeah. Now the next issue we move on to, this is issue number 8. Any other comments about that before we move on?
No, I thought it was again. It just hum right along, and I like how so far in this volume, it's the focus seems to be on, relatively speaking, the two more popular of the Ghostbusters, which is
Mhm.
Egon and Peter.
Well, speaking of Egon, issue number 8, the spotlight is on Egon because he's tracking down this paranormal entity that actually has ties to his younger life.
Hmm.
And we see that in the 1970s, Egon had a friend named Eugene. They attended university together. Then one night, Eugene was hit by a car crossing the street. Eugene actually saw death manifest in front of him.
Yeah.
But he remembers this paper he did on Russian folklore, and he manages to trap this entity in a bag. And before the driver could get out of the car, Eugene vanishes without a trace. And he just happens to reappear 20 years later.
Okay, what I liked about this was that there was a tie to his younger self, as you were alluding to. But also, what I liked about it was um, the use of, you know, the spiritual ghostly representation of death. Again,
Yeah.
taking a ghost from another culture.
Mhm.
And what I like about this Ghostbusters comic series so far, from the first volume and the second volume, it really is trying to use as many different types of spirits and ghosts as it
Mhm.
can. It's not just the stereotypical North American ideal of what a ghost is, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I like that. And also, my brother's name is Eugene, so
Well, I
kind of get
like
that.
that. You see, this is actually the reason we mentioned earlier the PKE readings, the high PKE readings in the city. This is where they were coming from, and I really like how they kind of throw you a little bit of a hook for the upcoming story, because you see Egon tell Eugene's dad he's not a ghost, he's something worse.
Okay. Yeah.
So you get the idea, this isn't really Egon's friend anymore, even though he looks like him, they have his memories. This is something else.
Yeah.
So
Like even when the guy's father is saying, once Egon, kind of tells the father, listen, I know he's in there. Let me talk to him, whatever. And there's at one point where he's walking Egon out and even he's expressing like almost a kind of fear
mhm,
and saying, I know he's not my son, but it is, in a way. So I felt bad and responsible and I wanted to help him.
right,
But I know eventually you're going to have to do what it is, what you do. And
right.
so it's kind of interesting to see the conflicted nature of the father
Mhm,
in all this.
yeah. Yeah. So I just want to say, in addition to that, as far as the artwork goes, again, I like this kind of stylized artwork, and I
Yeah,
also
Dan
like that.
Schoening is the artist, correct?
Yeah, and I also like that they included like some fan art, even some very young fans. You
Yeah.
see them doing fan art.
And listen, they could draw those young ones. They could draw better than I can. So
Yeah. I like that them including the fandom in this and acknowledging that there was a fandom, beyond just the original movies.
yeah,
So
and this was before. This
yeah, this
before.
was on 2012, I believe, is when
Yeah,
this trade was
because if you
published.
included some fans now, imagine DC included fan art
Yeah.
in their books. It'd be released. Release this, release that. It'd be never ending. So.
Uh,
I'm glad they do it for Ghostbusters and not for the DC books, because
yeah,
otherwise we'd be inundated with all that nonsense.
yeah. No, this was a fun read. Even though the trade paperback was like 130 pages, I just breezed through it.
And I like the fact that the last issue was a personalized Egon story.
Hmm.
That was cool.
Yeah.
I really like that. What I like about the series on the whole is that like you do get it's the best of both worlds in the fact that it's a team book,
Hmm.
but there are times when you can really spend a lot of time on individual characters when the
Right.
need arises.
Hmm.
Um, you know what I thought was funny that we didn't mention, and I think it's worth mentioning?
What?
Janine's boyfriend
Boyfriend, right? I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
looks almost identical to the Egon of the real Ghostbusters cartoon.
Uh-huh.
So that's really funny.
Yeah, so I had, like I said, I had fun reading this, and even though it was again 130 pages, it was a very easy read, a lot of fun.
Oh, it's an absolute blast.
Yeah,
I loved it.
yeah,
It really captures the tone and the spirit of the film franchise,
Mhm.
and I think there's an appropriate level of humor and legitimately terrifying looking, monsters and ghosts. I think
Yes, exactly.
it's a great balance,
Hmm.
and I love it. And I love that they've maintained the antagonism between Venkman and Peck.
Yeah. Well, and this is a great role for Walter Peck. This is a good way to utilize him beyond the movies. So,
Yeah, and there was also a nice little nod to Dana, even though she wasn't mentioned by name.
hmm
She's
so do you want to
kind
go
of like
ahead
a
and rate?
construct of the ghost.
Yeah, yeah. I'm down for anything that gives me green constructs, even if they're not from a ring. I'm down. So,
Yeah, you just like it green.
so you want to go ahead and rate these 4 issues?
Yeah, I think we'll do it all at once. I think it's story. I'm gonna say I'm gonna give them the overall story um, a 4.5. I like the fact that they're 4 issue arcs,
Hmm?
but sometimes I'm kind of left wanting a little bit more,
Hmm?
you know, in terms of you know in depth on the specific ghost or like just action and taking down the ghost. And I think if you had another issue or two, you could probably achieve that.
Hmm?
Not to say this was lacking action or anything like that, but just it's a personal preference. And then for art, I'm gonna say 5. Yeah,
Okay.
this art style just absolutely works perfectly for Ghostbusters.
I'm going to give both the art and the writing a 4.5. Thought it was just a lot of fun and very few criticisms. So
Awesome.
if you
Yeah.
are a Ghostbusters fan and you've never read the comics, these first 2 trade paperbacks I think are a good way
Well, I
to
think
jump
they're
into that.
must reads if you ask me, for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Um, and then so we will continue going through the volumes. Uh, but the next time that we reconvene for a Ghostbusters episode, we will either be reviewing another couple episodes of the animated series or Ghostbusters Afterlife, depending on when the movie is available exactly for streaming and when we record. But it'll be either one of those two things, and then we'll come back to the comics as we always do. But if you want to talk Ghostbusters between now and then, you can on social media. So, Donnie, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter as the Emerald Enthusiast. Let's talk collectibles. Let's talk comics. Let's talk Ghostbusters. Let's talk Green Lantern.
And if you want to find me, it's at Adam underscore Leafs fan on Twitter. The the network of podcasts that we do also has its own Twitter page. It's at MMNPDC. If you want to follow that. If you want to interact with either of us on Facebook, you can, because we have a Facebook group for the podcast. It's somewhere in the description below. Click that. I will add you, and we can continue the conversation on Facebook if you so choose. But until next time, remember that the Ghostbusters are forever. From the first time that the ghost inhabits a clown and he throws up green bats to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.
Let me tell you something. Bustin' makes me feel good.